Hello and welcome. I just finished Balan Wonderworld last night. Final episodes are actually editing on the editing computer right now. Um, yeah, let's talk about it. I want to preface this by saying that despite everything, I don't like this game. Um, and I'm going to do my best to be fair to it. I did not enjoy this game. There was some fun to be had in just how things were designed and poking fun at the game itself. But if you like this game, know that I did not. And though I am trying to be nice about it, this game was very much a chore to get through. And the only reason I beat it at all, despite having a bunch of other things, a bunch of other projects I was trying to do, is that I promised that I would. And I don't like not keeping my promises if I can help it. So, Balan Wonderworld, let's talk the good, right? Because there is some good. The costume idea is really cool. I think the idea behind the costumes is really great. I'll talk about my problems with the costume system in a little bit, but the idea behind the costumes is really great. I think that the cutscenes are beautiful. I think that they look gorgeous, and that if there was story to them, I think the story would be told really well here. Because of that, because of how nice the cutscenes are. Um, which we'll get into the story and my complaints about that in a minute. And then lastly, I like Balan's design. I honestly do. I think Balan's design is really cool. That's about it for the things that I liked, honestly. The everything from here on is going to be kind of ranty, and I'm going to do my best to keep it civil and to not get frustrated. But this game absolutely drove me up a wall. I will also say that if you want to watch me slowly lose my mind, the full Let's Play of Balan Wonderworld is on the channel and is slowly going up in a playlist. Like I said, the last episodes are editing right now, and then they will go up. But yeah, Balan Wonderworld drove me up a wall. So let's get into my issues with it, right? Because I have quite a few. I have a lot of issues with Balan Wonderworld. The first and foremost one is the costume system. I think that the costume system is a cool idea, but I think that it's implemented very poorly. I think that where the costume system, and again, if you like this game from here on out, you're probably not going to want to listen to this review, because I'm going to do my best to be fair, but I'm absolutely going to be critical. The costume system, because I don't want people to buy this game thinking it's going to be a great 3D platformer and then find out what it actually is. The costume system is designed in such a way where you gain a costume and it has a power. Because everything is all tied in together with Balan, the decisions are baffling to me. Because everything, there's only one button that does anything, which is your X button, is O button. I played on PS5, so like X, circle, square, triangle, all do the same thing. Triggers all do the same thing. All of them have a single function, and that goes across all the costumes too, which means if a costume has a power, it is one of two ways that it's activated, or three ways, I guess. A passive power, like the X-ray ape, or you have a variant where the effect works whenever it wants to, and so you have to wait. No, there's actually four ways. We'll get to that then too. Where you have to wait as it decides to do it on its own, like the Invisible Man costume, or Box Fox, which decides when it wants to turn into a box. You have costumes that you press X to use their ability. Those costumes you can't jump because your action button is taken to use their ability. Or the other ones where you can jump and use an action, and there's not really any reason why they're differentiated this way when you could have just given me the four face buttons and they all work. And I think, like, at its core, that makes everything else worse, right? Because there's only one button. So your platforming is bad because sometimes you have costumes that just can't jump. You have costumes that physically cannot jump in a 3D platformer, and you can't just take a costume off to be able to jump again. You just then cannot jump. You can go back to a checkpoint and change costumes, or you can try and find another costume that can jump. But if you can't do that, or if the checkpoint is behind a section that requires jumping, you pretty much just have to die and go back to the checkpoint. This leads to a lot of frustrations where you only have one costume left, And instead of putting the next costume on the ground where you can get it, they put it on a raised platform. But if you can't jump, can't get that costume. Why? I think the costumes themselves, again, are a really cool idea. I think the way that they work is really cool. I love the way that, hey, now I have Pumpkin Jack. That's not. I gave all these costumes nicknames because I couldn't remember all their actual names. But you have the pumpkin costume, which lets you do a series of super cool punches at range. I love that costume. However, if I were to take damage at any point in combat from anything, that includes enemies that hit you through your, what should be, I would think, iframes, because I'm punching forward and the enemy's attack went through that punch. That counts if an enemy spawns on top of me. That counts if an enemy projectile from behind hits me where I couldn't see it because the camera. We're going to get to the camera in a little bit. If I get hit for any reason, I lose that costume. No problem, right? Surely it's in a stock somewhere where I can just go get more. No, I have to go back and replay the level to get that costume. I have to go back and replay an entire level and risk losing it at any time by taking damage to get that costume. Every single time you lose your costumes. There's a bunch of costumes. The game just expects you to be perfect and never take damage. And I'll get into the way that the game expects you to be perfect, because that is a huge issue for me with this game. I think that it's okay for games to be hard, right? But give the player the chance to make a mistake, right? People shouldn't have to be in the zone every second of every moment in this game, right? But regardless, costumes. Some very cool ideas. Every once in a while, you get a costume that makes sense for the world that you're in based on the little bit that you can understand about the story of the character. But then sometimes it doesn't make any sense. I think the biggest example that we had most recently, because I played this game for the Discord, which you can access in the description by supporting us with as little as $1 a month on Patreon. You get access to the Discord. I played this game for the Discord live, and they were trying to figure out with the janitor level where the costumes made sense, right? And well, the vacuum cleaner makes sense because he picks things up, and the invisible man makes sense because he doesn't feel like anybody sees him, right? We had to glean all this information from a cutscene you don't get until after the 2 levels. But with no dialogue at all in it, by the way. But why is there an electric tiger there? Why? And it just feels like they didn't really have reasons for all of them, so they kind of just threw them in there, And I don't know, I can see the core of a good game here that uses all the face buttons and allows you to use the costume powers whenever you want to instead of whenever they want to. Or when you stop moving, the Electro Tiger, for reference, builds up an electric charge when you stop moving in a 3D platformer where you have to move. You also can't kill the enemies, the regular enemies, when you don't have a costume. I guess your jump is just not strong enough to squish them by jumping on them, but any costume gives you enough strength to do it. So if you don't have any costumes and you run into a combat encounter, you just have to lose. Or run away to go find a costume and come back. This game is so baffling to me with the decisions that it makes. Let's talk movement. Movement in Balan is like walking on ice at all times. You jump onto a platform and your character does like a little skid. And you can control it if you know it's coming, because you can basically cancel out of almost any movement. You have single frame jumps where if you're just barely touching a platform, you can jump to get onto the platform anyway, which is great. That's a good thing to have. The ability to cancel out of just about any movement is great. I like that a lot, right? However, because you're so slick and you slide around everywhere, there were many times that I would just slip off platforms. It was almost to the effect of like, in a Mario, for instance, when we're talking 3D platformers, and like Mario 64, if you slide off a platform because you move too far, and then you hit the edge of it, you bounce off. It's like that, but all the time in Balan. So, another issue that comes with movement is when you jump, your shadow's underneath you, right? Shadows don't seem to work properly in this game. So, for instance, there was a Balan trophy that I found at one point that is spinning. The trophy is I do spinning like this because that's what the shadow was doing, right? But the trophy itself is just doing this. So the shadow shouldn't be moving. Well, when you're jumping from above, your goal is to line your shadow up with the shadow of the object you're trying to touch, right? So that you know you land on it. Because again, depth is a little funky in Balan. You might think you're the right distance away to be able to jump onto an enemy, and you're actually a lot further away than you thought you were, even though it looks like you're close enough. So you aim for the shadows. That's the easy way around that, right? But the shadows they're not tethered one-to-one to the target, and so when the shadow's moving around like this, it's very difficult to land on the shadows. It made it where the basic combat of jumping on enemies was far more difficult than it needed to be. And again, if you don't land on that enemy and it hits you because you land in front of the enemy, you lose whatever costume you have equipped, which makes it incredibly punishing. So let's say you're perfect, right? Let's say you get through the entire level without taking any damage. Good job. You did it, right? Made it to the end. You just get to bring those 3 costumes with you. That's what you've achieved. Those 3 costumes that you're probably going to have to come back and get later when you get to the final boss. But we'll get to the final boss in a minute, because the final boss is something incredible in the way that I hate it. So costumes aside, platforming aside, I like the music. The music's good. However, the reason that I didn't put it in the good section is because I do have a big issue with the music, and that's that enemies will spawn in, and they respawn, by the way. They will respawn forever when you come into the arenas where they're at. Even if there's puzzles there that you need to do, they will just respawn. And when they do, the enemy music overrides the level music, and the level music is normally really good, but you just don't get to hear it half the time because the enemy music is there. You can get a good distance away from the enemies, and if they're still following you, you're still getting the enemy music, which is a huge bummer to me, because I think the enemy music is fine, but I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the level music. On a whole, the regular boss fights are fine. They do the job. Rule of threes is here for each and every one of them. There are costumes you can pick up on the stage that give you extra lives so that you can keep going, and those costumes almost always have different ways that you can use them to beat the boss. I think that these bosses are very boring because I don't think they're very challenging, and it takes a long time for them to get to a vulnerable state, but I don't think they're necessarily bad. I just think that they're a little boring. The boss designs themselves are really cool, and I like them a lot. The whole goal of this game is to collect Balan trophies so you can unlock more worlds, so you can unlock the final boss, right? So you can get your story. But the story... I forgot to talk about how good the Tims are. We'll get to that in a minute. The story is not here. The story is ripped out of the game and put into a book that is sold separately from the game. And it shows. It really does. It shows. You get these cutscenes where you're supposed to care about these people, and you do care a little bit, right? They do a good job with some of them of giving you an idea of what they're going through with no words and no dialogue, right? But then for others, it's just like, okay, sure, yeah. This lady is upset because the birds don't have anywhere to live. Sure, I can understand that. I can sympathize with that. I agree with her. But I don't know her name. I don't know anything about her. This girl likes to swim with dolphins, and this dolphin betrayed her. That's horrible. I don't know her name. I don't know anything about her. This clown boy has feelings for this girl, and he's afraid that she'll turn him down. Sure, I get that, but I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him, and it repeats that loop every time of here's this character that might be interesting, that might have some cool stuff going on, that might be really struggling and depressed, but you don't really know anything about him, so it's really hard to get invested. And so then, spoilers for the end of the game, at the end of the game, when they show up to help you, it's like, oh, hey, it's that guy that played chess. Cool. Instead of being like, oh, man, it's the guy. It's he had this thing going on, but there he is. He's here to help me anyway. I just don't know these people, And where it really bothers me is that when you go to fight the final boss, Balan speaks to you, as he has many other times in this game, in whatever language that the characters are speaking, but you get subtitles. You get subtitles right at the end, not anywhere else in the game. You get subtitles for one line, and then you never get them again. Ever. Even at the end, when everybody's saying goodbye and it's this big moment, you still don't get subtitles. And it just really bothers me that they took the story out of the game and put it in a book instead. I guess they just expected everybody to go, okay, well, I'll read the book before I play the game, when they wouldn't know if they would like the game or not. And it just, it really bothers me. So you get these Balan statues, and some of them are fairly easy to get, and some of them are absolutely not. Some of them are in very difficult to reach places that you need very specific costumes for that don't exist in that level, so you have to bring them from another level. So hope you don't take damage anywhere in there or fall off and die. Because there's also traps in all the levels and places you can fall in every level, and if you fall, when you land back up again, you lose that costume. But there's another way to get Balan trophies, and it's from the minigames and the Balan bouts. The minigames are okay. They play all right. You have to get a perfect score. You can't mess up at all to get Balan trophies. But hey, Balan statues. Sorry. It's a cool idea, right? I wish that I could just select them from the menu and try them again, or that I could just redo them till I got them right. But the far more annoying ones are the Balan bouts. And what a Balan bout is I'll give you an example here, using Kamen Rider Skull and Kamen Rider Ditto. So what a Balan bout is Balan flies up, and he does a little spin, and then Lance flies up. I had to be told his name was Lance, by the way, so you know. Lance flies up sometimes. Sometimes it's just rocks. And in those situations, Balan just flies up and hits the rocks and breaks them. But Lance flies up, and they'll do some attacks. And you say, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Like a big beam attack, or like a punch, and then dive back in. And it's all characterized by these cool flips and spins and dives. But there's only like 10 animations of it. There's only like 10 clips, and they just repeat ad nauseum. And so you'll have a situation where Balan like dives in and hits him, and then Lance flies off screen, and then Balan just dives in to hit him again, and then Balan just dives in to hit him again, or they do the beam attack, and then they do the beam attack again, and then they do the beam attack again, with the exact same clip, over and over and over. And to get the Balan statue from these, you have to get a perfect score on a QTE that you don't know exactly what, because you have to line Balan up with the Balan shadow to be able to match the QTE. And so, since you have to get it perfect, if you get a grade on the first one, you might as well just mash and get out of there faster, because these things go for like 3 or 4 minutes. And if you mess up even once, you don't get the statue. You've just wasted your time. And the fact that multiple hours of my life now have been wasted away in Balan bouts alone infuriates me, because they could have easily made it where you don't have to get all perfects, all excellence. Just greats would be good enough. Don't get a good, right? Or get above a certain number of excellence. But as soon as you get that first good or great, you might as well just fake it. You might as well just mash, because you have lost. It's over. And it's just really frustrating, because you'd say, well, just go back in and try it again, right? You want 100% completion. You can't. You have to redo the entire level to do that Balan bout again. So if you mess up at the very last one, which I have done multiple times, you have to redo the entire level and the entire Balan bout just to try again. And it's infuriating. They're so poorly designed, in my opinion. I guess we got to talk about the final boss, right? Do we have to talk about the final boss? Yeah, we should. We should talk about the final boss. So, the most frustrating thing for me in everything, the level design in this game is not great. The hitboxes in this game are not great. The story that is not in the game could be great, and I just don't know, right? I'm going to read the book next. and then I'll review the book separately. The boss design is not great. The rough combat, the rough movement, all of it comes together to not be great, right? But the worst part of this game, without doubt, is the final boss. Final boss is a two-stage fight. Two-stage fight with no checkpoints. In the first stage, you have to fight Lance. You bring 3 costumes with you. There are no costumes on that final platform. So if you lose all 3 costumes, Lance will insta-kill you. You have to start over. You don't get those costumes back. The game automatically saves after every loss. So those costumes are gone, which means you need to go get more costumes, basically. You have very short windows to hit Lance. You can't hit him when he's floating around. You have either when he's making a dive at you with his 4 clones, or sometimes when he's above the vine, the whip that he summons. Sometimes you can hit him with a ranged attack or by jumping into his face. And sometimes the attack hits the vine instead and thus does no damage to Lance at all. And I spent upwards of like 30 minutes just fighting that phase. Frustrated because the attack sometimes would register and sometimes just wouldn't. Along with the really slippery movement that meant that sometimes I just fell off the stage, right? It was incredibly frustrating because he also summons trash mobs that you have to fight. And again, the base combat is not good. So it's just constantly having to deal with the trash, with a vine that spawns on top of you, and maybe you can hit him then and maybe you can't. Or the 5 that rush towards you, and sometimes you jump and it works, and sometimes you jump and it doesn't, because I forgot to mention, Balan Wonderworld also eats input sometimes. You push the button and just nothing happens because the game decided that the enemy's attack was first. But you finally beat Lance. And you get into the second half of the boss fight, where you fight, of course, a giant dragon, right? And it looks cool. It's a very cool looking dragon. You have these 4 eyes that you have to do damage to, and you have 3 phases to try and destroy 3 of the 4, right? You are given costumes from your friends in what should be the big, hey, your friends are here to help you, big moment, right? You're given costumes, and if you take damage, you lose that costume and you don't get it back. And your goal is to hit these eyes that are floating off the platform, basically. So you have to be very, very specific to be able to hit them. It's not easy to do. It's also not easily explained, because up until that point, you hadn't been having to hit things when they were off platform. In every boss fight, basically, you've been having to hit things that are on platform. So that was fun. But if you lose all 3 of your costumes, the boss kills you. Because then, hey, why not? And for what it's worth, I think it wasn't that I lost the costumes that first time. I think it's that I didn't get enough of the eyes, and so the beam was too big that killed me. But you can miss the eyes when you jump for them, because of course you can. One of the costumes they give you is the Firefighter Costume, which fires a bubble of water directly in front of you. And sometimes, even if you charge it, it eats the input for the charge release, and the shot just goes in front of you, even though it's fully charged. But you beat that, and then the giant dragon falls onto the platform, so you can climb up his side and beat the thing on his head. Well, I didn't know that he fell on the platform, because how would I? And he landed on top of me and instantly killed me, even though I still had 3 costumes. Or 2 costumes, sorry. No problem, right? Got to that phase, can do it again, can beat it, no problem. Except you start back at Lance. And you have to go through the whole thing again. The whole thing. Don't make mistakes. Don't get hit. You better perfect it. And you may say, but Trey, you love Nier. And the final thing of Nier, like ending E, Nier, Drakengard, you love Drakengard. The final thing of Drakengard 1, ending E, is you have to do it perfect thing, right? Yes, but it starts you back at that final thing that you have to do perfect. And so because it doesn't do that, I got to watch the animation of everybody coming to save you like 3 times, and it very much cheapens that moment when you just watch it over and over again. It's like, well, yeah, of course they're here. when you do a moment like that, you really need it to be a gimme, right? You need it to be a, hey, everybody's giving you the power, now you can win easily. Instead of a, all right, here's the cutscene again. And it really bothers me, man. I don't like this final boss at all. I think it's extremely poorly designed. Just a checkpoint, some costumes on the stage, anything. Because also, I forgot to mention, I hate when you're forced to lose. And you're forced to lose in the first phase against the final dragon, and the game doesn't convey that to you at all. It's supposed to be like a, oh, you can't possibly win on your own, but here are your friends to save you moment. Then don't even let me fight it. Give me a cutscene where I lose against it. And it just, this game. Then you unlock the secret levels, which are redone versions of the original levels. I'll tell you right now, for the playthrough, I'm not playing those. If you can get that final episode of Balan to 30,000 likes, I'll play it, but I'm not playing it. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. I'm so done. I'm so incredibly done. So, the one saving grace for Balan is the Tims, right? The Tims are beautiful. The Tims are so cute. You gather Tims as you play by finding eggs in the world that hatch. You can breed Tims to be able to get more eggs. The Tim breeding system doesn't make a lot of sense. And also, once you have a lot of Tims, you throw out gems and then they just all eat. And so then you don't get any Tams because they don't grow big because there's so many of them. But if you throw a Tim into a Tam, then you breed them. And it may share qualities of one of its two parents, but sometimes I would breed them and it just didn't. Like I had a bunny-eared one, and I bred it with a bunny-eared Tam, and I was like, great, I'm going to get some more bunny-eared Tims. And the one that came out had, like, cat ears. I do know that there is a Balan costume that you can get that requires Tim breeding and finding the rainbow gems and all that fun stuff. I'm not, it doesn't mean that much to me. Because, at the end of the day, yes, it lets you fly, and that sounds sick, but it's also still just a costume. Which means that if you get hit even once, you lose it. If you fall off a platform while you're flying around, you lose it. So no thank you. No thank you. There's a lot of other little complaints I could give of costumes that are put in places where once you get them, their ability works against you. Like the costume that when you're not moving, time stops. That's a cool idea for a costume, right? But it's put around a spirally pathway with things shooting at you, and then a fan with a stomper that comes down and releases a thing of flames. And that's incredibly hard to time when you can't see it moving unless you just walk back and forth jittery style. There's a bunch of them like that. But my biggest complaint, despite everything, is that you gave me a game where the Tims are there, right? And they're cute, and they're wonderful, and they're incredible, and then you made it where they can die. The Tims can just die. And, like, they're not that helpful in combat. Sometimes they don't even listen, but they're cute, and they're my children. And why would you make it where they can die in a game that has combat like this? It upsets me. I don't like this game. I don't think anybody should buy this game. I honestly don't. I do not think this game is worth your money. I'm glad that I played it so that I know for myself. And if you want to know, go watch the full playthrough up on this channel. I'll include a link to the playlist. It'll come up in the annotations that come up here. The box will probably be like right here for the playlist. But yeah, I don't like Balan Wonderworld. I don't think you should buy Balan Wonderworld. I think that Balan Wonderworld is a great showcase of the issues with game design when you make an idea and then don't think about the ramifications it will have for everything else. And that is the costume system. I don't think it's a very good 3D platformer. I wish that the story was actually in the game so that I knew what was going on. I feel like when I finish reading the book and review that, I will be even more upset because I have a gut feeling that the book is going to be good. And it's going to make me even more upset that they cut the story out of the game. But I don't know what caused all these decisions. I would love to. I would love to get to hear the full story of Balan Wonderworld, and maybe one day we will. But until next time, I have been Trey. This has been The Full Spectrum. Let me know your thoughts on Balan Wonderworld in the comment section down below. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum. Balan Wonderworld has to offer.